Please, tell them I'm coming. Don't let them start the scan without me. The man's voice cracked over the phone, low enough that only the waitress near table 12 could hear it. He was already standing, already reaching for his coat, knocking his water glass sideways without noticing. Outside, a car idled with its hazards blinking against the rain-slicked street. He left everything on the table, the bill, the wine, and a wallet thick enough to bulge his jacket pocket, and walked out into the Seoul night like a man running out of time. "Sir, you forgot." Amara's voice caught in her throat as the black car pulled away before she reached the curb. She looked down at the wallet in her hand, heavier than it had any right to be, and felt the particular dread of holding something that was not hers to keep. Her manager was already calling her back inside. Her shift was already over, and somewhere across the city, a 7-year-old girl was waiting for a father who did not yet know that a stranger had just decided, quietly, to find him. "Just take what you need and drop the rest in a mailbox," Blessing said, not unkindly, counting out her own tips at the register. It was the kind of advice that made sense to anyone who had never seen what was folded beside the cash. A single scrap of paper, soft at the creases from being read too many times. Amara did not know yet whose handwriting it was, or what it would come to mean. She only knew she could not leave it behind. By midnight, she would be standing outside a tower of glass she had no business entering. By the following spring, she would be standing inside a family that had no business wanting her, and one folded note, never meant for her eyes, would end up read aloud in front of both. This is where it started, with a lost wallet, an empty table, and a decision that cost her more than anyone in that restaurant understood. The restaurant on the 3rd floor of the Bowman Grill smelled of charcoal and grilled hanwoo, and by 9 o'clock on a Friday, the private booths were full of men in dark suits, speaking too loudly about numbers Amara did not need to understand to serve. Table 12 had been quiet all evening. One man, alone, cufflinks undone, a phone he kept turning face down and then face up again, as if daring it to ring. When it finally did, he answered before the second tone. "Please, tell them I'm coming," he said, voice pitched low, but not low enough. "Don't let them start the scan without me." Amara, refilling water 2 tables away, did not mean to hear it. She heard it anyway. She had learned, in 3 years of waiting tables in this city, to read the weather of a man's face before he said a word. And this man's face had gone the color of old paper. He stood so fast his chair scraped the floor, loud enough to turn heads. He did not apologize. He left a folded stack of bills under his water glass that would have covered the bill twice over, shrugged his coat halfway onto one shoulder, and was gone before the door had finished swinging behind him. On the leather bench where he had been sitting, half hidden under the edge of a napkin, sat a wallet, thick, dark brown, monogrammed so quietly you would miss it if you weren't looking. Amara looked at it for a long moment before she picked it up. The way you look at something that has just become, without asking your permission, your problem. Outside the window, rain had started, fine and silver under the streetlights, and somewhere in that rain, a black car was already 3 blocks gone. She did not know his name yet. She did not know that he was already thinking, in the back of a taxi with his knuckles white against his knee, of nothing at all except a hospital corridor and his daughter's small, still face. All she knew was that a stranger had walked out of her restaurant carrying an emergency and left this, heavy, warm from his coat, someone else's whole night folded into leather, sitting in her open hand. By the time Amara reached the street, the car's taillights had already dissolved into the wet, red smear of Gangnam traffic. She stood under the restaurant's awning for a moment, wallet pressed flat against her apron, breath fogging in the cold, and permitted herself exactly 3 seconds of hoping someone else would solve this for her. No one did. Inside, Mr. Choi was already stacking chairs onto tables with the particular fury of a man who wanted to go home. "Leave it at lost and found," he said, not looking up. "He'll call. Rich men always call." It was, she knew, entirely reasonable advice, the kind a sensible person would take without a second thought, and she filed it away next to all the other reasonable things she had learned to ignore since arriving in this country 4 years ago, with 1 suitcase and a return ticket she had never used. She finished her closing side work with the wallet zipped into the inner pocket of her bag, where it sat against her hip like a small stone, the whole subway ride home, through 2 transfers, past a busker singing something slow in a language she didn't recognize, past the convenience store where she usually bought her instant noodles but tonight walked past without stopping. Her apartment, when she reached it, was one room above a laundromat, warm with the smell of someone else's detergent rising through the floorboards. And she sat on the edge of her bed with the wallet in her lap for a long time before she opened it properly. There was a driver's license, a company badge with a photograph of a man who looked younger and steadier than the one who had bolted out of table 12. Cards from banks she had heard of only in television dramas, and enough cash, folded twice and rubber banded, to cover 4 months of the money she sent home to her mother in Lagos. 4 months of her brother Emeka's school fees, 4 months of not lying awake calculating exchange rates. She did not count it, though her mind did the arithmetic anyway, fast and shameful, before she could stop it. She closed the wallet like it had burned her. Outside her window, the last train rattled somewhere beneath the city, and she thought, with a kind of tired clarity, that she already knew what she was going to do. She simply had not yet worked out how much it would cost her to do it. Blessing found her the next afternoon before their shift, counting the restaurant's float behind the register, with the brisk efficiency of a woman who had been doing this job long enough to stop being surprised by anything. She was Nigerian too, from Enugu, 5 years ahead of Amara in this particular life. The shared apartments, the shift work, the long silence of video calls home, where you smiled and said everything was fine. When Amara showed her the wallet, low, under the counter, Blessing didn't even blink. "Take what you need out of it and drop the rest somewhere. He'll find it," she said, already turning back to her count. "He won't miss it. Men like that don't miss anything." She said it without malice, the way you'd give directions to a street you knew well, and for a moment, Amara almost believed her. Almost let herself imagine what 4 months of easy money would feel like, how it would feel to send her mother a transfer that didn't require 3 weeks of overtime first. Mr. Choi, passing behind them with a crate of soju, added his own version of the same advice without being asked, "Leave it, forget it. A man with a car like that has people whose whole job is losing things for him." It was not cruelty. It was the ordinary economy of a city that had taught all three of them, in different ways, that generosity flowed only one direction. And it was not toward people like them. Amara said nothing to either of them. She had grown up watching her mother turn away customers who begged for credit at the shop in Lagos and extend it anyway, quietly, out of a drawer she kept for exactly that purpose. And though Amara had told herself for years that she would be more careful than her mother, more practical, she recognized now the particular stubbornness rising in her chest for what it was, inherited and inconvenient, and not something she had ever managed to talk herself out of. She thought about the arithmetic again that night, what it would cost her, precisely, to do the thing she already knew she would do. The last subway left the station near his office tower at 12:40. Missing it meant a taxi she could not comfortably afford, or a 40-minute walk through neighborhoods she didn't know, in shoes built for standing at tables, not walking through them. It meant showing up somewhere she did not belong, carrying a stranger's money, with no proof beyond her own face that she hadn't already spent half of it. She wrote the numbers down on the back of a receipt, the way her mother used to before every difficult decision, and looked at them for a long time. Then she folded the receipt in half, the same careful way she would later fold the note she found inside the wallet and put on her coat. The note was the last thing she found, tucked into a slim pocket behind the driver's license where most people kept a photograph instead. It was not a photograph. It was a single sheet of paper, torn from something smaller. A notepad, maybe, the kind kept by a kitchen phone, folded so many times the creases had gone soft as cloth. She should not have opened it. She told herself this even as her fingers were already unfolding it, the old habit of a woman who read everything left within reach, order slips and grocery lists and other people's discarded notebooks, because information was the one thing in this city that had never cost her anything. The handwriting was small, rounded, clearly a woman's and clearly written in a hurry. A grocery list, mostly. Ordinary things, rice and soy sauce and a child's vitamins. The kind of list anyone might leave for a husband running an errand. But at the bottom, in different ink, as though added later and separately, was one more line. Amara read it twice before she understood that she had no right to read it a third time. She folded it back exactly as she had found it, matching crease to crease with the care of someone, repairing something she had accidentally broken, and slid it back into the pocket behind the license, and did not tell herself what it meant. though some part of her had already guessed, the way you guess the ending of a story, from the particular quality of its silence. She checked the time, 12:06. If she left now, walking fast, she could reach the last train with 11 minutes to spare. And from there, it was one transfer to the district, where his company card said his office stood. 40 floors of glass she had walked past 100 times, without once imagining she would need to enter it. She put on her coat. She did not call Blessing, and she did not tell Mr. Choi, because she had learned that the surest way to talk yourself out of the right thing was to ask people who had already decided it wasn't worth doing. She stepped out into a night gone properly cold. The wallet zipped inside her coat against her chest, like something that needed to be kept warm, and started walking toward the last train. Doing the tired arithmetic of subway fares and missed sleep one final time before she let herself stop counting altogether. The tower was called Iseong, and at that hour its lobby was a cathedral of dark glass and a single-board security guard behind a marble desk far too large for one man's coffee cup and phone. He looked at Amara the way security guards in buildings like that had always looked at her, quickly, then again more slowly, cataloging the uniform under her coat, the hour, the absence of any reason a woman like her would be standing in his lobby at midnight. She held up the wallet before he could ask. "This belongs to someone who works here," she said. "I need to return it tonight." He did not reach for it. Instead, he picked up a phone and spoke in the clipped, careful Korean of a man following a script written for exactly this situation, and after a pause that felt considerably longer than it was, told her that the man she was looking for was not in the building. He had left hours ago and was not expected back. Something in her face must have shown the full weight of what that answer cost her, the 11 minutes she had traded for the last train, the walk home she would now have to make in the rain, because the guard's posture changed fractionally from suspicion to something closer to consideration. He made a second call. This one he did not narrate. When he hung up, he told her, almost gently, that a car was being sent and that she should wait by the entrance. She did not know, standing under that absurd chandelier of a lobby with a stranger's wallet in her coat, that 30 floors above her in a corner office no one was using, an assistant named Jun Ho had just relayed an unusual instruction from a hospital corridor across the city, that whoever had come looking for the chairman tonight was to be brought to him immediately, however that needed to happen, because in 11 years of managing Kang Doyen's affairs, Jun Ho had never once heard that particular tightness in his voice. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and old coffee, and Kang Doyen was sitting in a plastic chair too small for a man his size, elbows on his knees, when the elevator opened and a stranger in a restaurant uniform stepped out, holding his wallet in both hands like something she was returning to a shrine. He stood up so fast the chair nearly tipped. For a moment, neither of them said anything useful. "You didn't have to," he started, and she cut him off, not rudely, just efficiently, the way she cut off customers who tried to overtip her for doing her job. "I know, here." She held it out. He took it, checked it out of some old reflex. The cash was there, all of it, the cards untouched. And when he looked up to thank her properly, she was already crouching down to the small girl half asleep against the chairs. A girl with a bandage above one eyebrow, and eyes that had not, according to the nurses, made real contact with anyone since arriving. Amara did not ask what had happened. She simply said, quietly, in the voice she used for nervous customers and homesick co-workers, that the bandage looked very brave, and that she herself had once fallen off a bicycle and had a scar exactly like it, right there, and did the girl want to see. The girl looked at her scar. Then, for the first time in 2 hours, according to everyone in that corridor, she almost smiled. Amara did not stay to see the rest of it. She said goodnight, refused the offer of a taxi home with a firmness that surprised even her, and walked toward the elevator with the specific lightness of someone who has just put down something heavy. Doyen watched the doors close behind her before he remembered he had never asked her name. "Find out who that was," he told Junho, quietly, still watching the closed doors as though they might open again if he looked hard enough. It was not, he told himself, anything more than gratitude. The ordinary, forgettable gratitude a person feels toward a stranger who returns something and asks for nothing. A feeling that should have dissolved by morning along with the adrenaline of the worst night of the year. A nurse came to tell him Hana's scan was clear, only a mild concussion. A week of quiet and no swimming, and he thanked her with the distracted relief of a man whose attention had already, without his permission, wandered back toward an elevator that had closed several minutes ago. He would spend the next several weeks discovering how wrong he'd been to call it only gratitude. Junho found her 3 days later, waiting outside the restaurant's staff entrance at the end of a lunch shift, holding a business card between 2 fingers, like he wasn't entirely sure she wouldn't refuse to take it. She almost did. "Chairman Kang would like to thank you properly," he said, and named a figure that made Blessing, listening from 6 feet away while pretending to smoke, actually stop pretending. Amara looked at the card for a long moment. Kang Doyun, it said, Chairman and CEO, Iseong Engineering and Construction, the same neat title she had glimpsed on the badge inside the wallet without understanding what it meant, and then handed it back. "Tell him I said you're welcome," she said, "and that I didn't do it for a reward." Junho, who had delivered exactly this kind of envelope perhaps a dozen times in his career and never once had it refused, stood there a moment longer than professionalism strictly required, recalculating something in his expression before he nodded and left. Amara told herself, walking back inside, that this was the end of it. A strange, expensive night, now closed, a story she might tell her mother on their next call and nothing more. She was wrong within the week. Kang Doyun did not send another envelope. Instead, on a Tuesday when the restaurant was quiet enough that Mr. Choi allowed personal calls at the counter, he came in person, in a coat too well cut for the neighborhood, and waited at the bar until her shift ended, rather than pulling rank to interrupt it. It was, Amara would think later, the first thing about him that surprised her. Not the wealth, which announced itself in everything from his watch to the careful stillness with which he stood, but the patience, the apparent willingness to simply wait his turn like anyone else. "I'm not here to pay you," he said, before she could repeat what she'd told his assistant. "I already tried that. I'm here because my daughter asked about you twice this week, and I don't know how to explain to a 7-year-old why the person who made her smile for the first time in 2 years isn't allowed to be thanked." It was, Amara noted, a considerably more effective argument than money, and she suspected he knew it. His name, she learned over the following half hour, sitting across from him at a table that was usually reserved and now, at his quiet insistence, was not, meant considerably more in this city than the badge had let on. Iseong Engineering had built half the bridges and a third of the residential towers south of the river. His late father had founded it from a single surveying office in the 70s, and Doyun had run it for 6 years, since long before he was ready, since the accident of inheritance had arrived at the same time as the accident of loss. His wife, Seoyeon, dead of an illness that had moved faster than anyone expected, leaving him a company and a daughter, and, it seemed, very little practice at either. He did not tell Amara all of this that night. He told her the outline, carefully, the way a man tells a stranger only as much as is useful, and asked instead whether she would consider, not charity, he was careful to specify, watching her face for the flicker of refusal he'd clearly anticipated. Coming twice a week, paid properly on a contract, to help with Hana after school, since the last 2 nannies had lasted 11 days, and 4, respectively. And his daughter had said exactly 9 words to Amara in a hospital corridor and had not stopped talking about her since. Amara did not say yes immediately. She asked about hours, about whether it would conflict with her evening shifts, about what exactly he expected from her beyond kindness, because she had learned the hard way that vague arrangements with powerful men rarely stayed vague for long. She named her own terms. A proper contract, fair pay measured against what any qualified caregiver in this city would earn, Tuesdays and Thursdays only, and the clear understanding that she was doing this for the child, not for him. Doyun agreed to all of it without negotiating a single point, which Amara found, against her better judgment, more reassuring than if he'd fought her on any of it. She signed the contract 2 days later at her kitchen table, reading every line twice the way her mother had taught her to read anything, with a signature line at the bottom, and felt, folding it into her bag afterward, an unfamiliar and slightly frightening optimism. The sense of a door opening that she had not gone looking for, and had no intention of walking through carelessly. The arrangement found its own rhythm faster than either of them expected. Tuesdays and Thursdays, Amara arrived at the Kang residence, a house, not an apartment, tucked behind a gate in a neighborhood so quiet it seemed to have agreed collectively to stop making noise after 6. Anne let herself into a kitchen too large for the amount of cooking that happened in it. Hannah was shy for the first 2 weeks in the specific watchful way of a child who has learned that adults leave. She answered questions in single words. She ate dinner facing her plate rather than the table. It was the jollof rice that changed things on the 3rd Tuesday, when Amara ran out of ways to ask about school and simply started cooking instead, filling the kitchen with the smell of tomatoes and thyme and a particular blend of spices she'd had shipped, at some expense, from a shop in Itaewon that stocked things from home. Hannah appeared in the doorway before the rice was done, drawn by a smell that had nothing to do with anything she'd eaten before, and asked, in her careful, precise English, what it was called. Amara told her. Hannah tried it, made a face that could have gone either direction, and then asked for more. It became, without either of them planning it, a Tuesday ritual. Amara cooking something from home while Hannah did homework at the counter, occasionally offering commentary in the blunt, unfiltered manner of children, that the smell was strange but good, that Amara's hands moved fast, that her own mother used to hum while she cooked too, a detail offered so casually that Amara nearly missed the weight of it. The fact that Hannah rarely mentioned her mother to anyone at all. Thursdays looked different. Pickup from school, the walk to the subway that Hannah insisted on taking, even though a driver waited outside, because she liked, she said, watching the doors open and close. Amara found herself narrating the city to her, the way she used to narrate it to herself in her first lonely months in Seoul, the couple arguing quietly by the noodle stand, the elderly man feeding pigeons who weren't there, small human weather that made the enormous city feel, briefly, like a manageable size. Her new pay, arriving properly and on schedule into an account that had spent 4 years running slightly too lean, meant that for the first time since arriving in Korea, she sent her mother's transfer a full week early and did not spend the following week doing the anxious arithmetic of rent against remittance against the small, guilty luxury of new shoes for work. She wrote to her mother about it, carefully vague about the family involved, and her mother wrote back one line that Amara read several times. "Be careful with rich men's children. They teach you to love easily and leave hard." She did not yet know how right that warning would turn out to be, in ways her mother hadn't quite meant. By the 6th week, Hannah had begun greeting her by running rather than walking, a detail the household staff noted to each other, with the particular interest of people who had watched a quiet child for 2 years. She taught Amara the names of the koi in the garden pond, all invented, all elaborate, and insisted on correcting her when she used the wrong one. She started speaking, unprompted, at dinner, not long sentences, but real ones, about a friend at school who had a hamster, about a teacher she disliked, about a dream she'd had involving a whale in the swimming pool that Amara suspected was actually about something else entirely and did not push. Doyun, arriving home earlier than his schedule strictly allowed on the pretext of paperwork he could easily have done at the office, began appearing in the kitchen doorway at the tail end of these Tuesday dinners more often than either he or Amara acknowledged directly. He did not interrupt. He leaned against the doorframe with his tie already loosened and watched his daughter narrate her invented koi, with a kind of attention Amara suspected he rarely gave anything at the office. And once, catching Amara's eye across the counter, while Hannah explained at length why the orange one was named Ambassador, he smiled, briefly, involuntarily, the smile of a man who had forgotten he still had one available to him. Amara noticed it and filed it away next to all the other things about this arrangement she had decided not to examine too closely, because examining them meant admitting that Tuesdays and Thursdays had stopped at some point she couldn't precisely locate, being only about the money. There was a night, the 2nd week of the 2nd month, when Hannah fell asleep at the counter over her homework and Doyun carried her upstairs himself rather than call for the housekeeper, and came back down to find Amara still there, washing the last of the dishes, though her contract had technically ended 40 minutes earlier. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know," she said, and kept washing, and he found himself, against every instinct honed by 6 years of running a company that had taught him precisely how to end unproductive conversations, sitting down at the counter instead of saying goodnight, and staying for another 20 minutes talking about nothing important at all, which was, he would realize much later, the first unimportant conversation he'd had with anyone since Seoyeon died. It happened on an ordinary Thursday, The kind that had become so routine, neither of them marked it as anything special anymore. Doyon came home at 6 instead of 9, a small rebellion against his own calendar that he told himself was about a headache and not about anything else, and let himself in through the side door rather than the front, out of some half-formed instinct not to announce himself. He heard it before he saw them. Laughter, real and unguarded, coming from the kitchen, high and delighted in a register he associated, with a jolt that stopped him flat in the hallway, with a version of his daughter he had assumed, quietly and without ever saying so to anyone, was simply gone. He stood in the hallway longer than was reasonable, coat still on, listening to Hana laugh at something Amara had said about a customer who'd once ordered 40 skewers and eaten none of them, laughing the specific unrestrained laugh of a child who has, for one uncomplicated moment, forgotten to be careful. He did not go in immediately. He stood there and let himself feel, without an audience, the particular pain of gratitude, the way relief for your child can arrive at the same time as grief for everything that made the relief necessary, so that you cannot fully feel one without the other. When he finally stepped into the kitchen doorway, both of them looked up, and Hana ran to him with a story about the 40 skewers that she got only half right. And over her head, Amara looked at him with an expression he could not entirely name, something between apology for having been the reason for a joy he hadn't been there to cause, and something else he was not yet ready to name at all. He asked her to stay for dinner that night, an invitation that fell slightly outside the boundaries she had drawn for herself weeks earlier, and she hesitated exactly long enough for him to notice before she said yes on the condition that she cook. Because the housekeeper's kimchi jjigae, she said with the particular bluntness that had become one of the things he most looked forward to, needed help. They ate at the kitchen counter rather than the dining room that had sat mostly unused since Seoyeon died. Hana between them narrating her day in exhaustive detail, and for the length of one meal the house felt, Doyon thought, like something other than a place he returned to at the end of long days to manage grief by scheduling around it. IT was Hana's bedtime, some weeks later, that gave them their first real conversation without her in the room. Amara had stayed to help settle her, a new addition to the routine, unofficial, unpaid, that neither of them had formally agreed to, and both simply allowed to continue, and came downstairs to find Doyun still at the counter, 2 cups of tea poured, one clearly for her. She almost declined. She did not. She used to make that face, he said, without preamble, when Amara sat down, nodding toward the stairs. Seoyeon, when she was concentrating on something. Hana does it exactly the same way, and I don't think anyone's ever told her that, because I've never been able to say it out loud before now. It was not a long confession. He did not elaborate on the illness, or the 18 months of it, or the particular loneliness of running a company through a wife's decline while trying not to let a 4-year-old notice anything was wrong. He said only that much, and then drank his tea, and Amara understood that the sentence had cost him something specific to say, the way certain sentences do, and did not fill the silence that followed it, with reassurance he suspected he didn't want. Later that same evening, her phone buzzed with the notification of a completed transfer, her mother's remittance sent a few days early again, and she silenced it too quickly, a reflex, before remembering he'd already seen the screen. She braced for pity. It didn't come. My father did the same thing for his mother, every month, for 30 years, he said instead, quietly, until the day he could finally afford to stop, and told me once it was the only bill he was ever proud to pay. It was a small thing to say. It changed nonetheless, something in the shape of the evening, and when he walked her to the gate afterward, neither of them found anything to say for the length of the driveway, which felt, to both of them, considerably more significant than if they had. At the gate, she thanked him for the tea, which was not really what either of them was thanking the other for. And he stood there a moment after the gate had closed behind her, watching the empty street the way he'd once watched a closing elevator, before he finally went back inside to an unusually quiet house. The invitation arrived through Jun-ho rather than Doyon himself, which told Amara something before she'd even opened it. A formal card, heavier stock than anything in her apartment, requesting her presence for tea with Han Miran, honorary chair of the Kang Family Foundation, and, as Blessing informed her, with the particular relish of someone delivering useful gossip, the single most intimidating woman in 3 districts worth of society pages. Doyon had not arranged it. He seemed, when Amara mentioned it, genuinely unsettled, which did nothing to calm her nerves and rather more to confirm them. The tea house Han Miran had chosen was traditional, hushed, the kind of place where the silence itself seemed expensive. And she was already seated when Amara arrived, small and precise in a hanbok, so understated it announced its cost through restraint rather than display. She did not offer pleasantries. "You've been very useful to my granddaughter," she said, once tea had been poured by hands that were not her own. "I'd like to understand why." The questions that followed were not cruel exactly, but they were relentless, circling the same suspicion from a dozen angles. How much Amara earned, what she had earned before, whether she had family in Nigeria who might benefit from an introduction to a wealthy Korean household, whether she understood, truly understood, the difference between being useful to a lonely child and being welcome in a family that had buried a wife 2 years ago and could not, Han Miran said, with a precision that landed exactly where it was aimed, afford to bury anything else soon. Amara answered each question directly, without flinching and without over-explaining, the way her mother had taught her to answer men who tried to intimidate her out of a fair price at the market. She was not, she said, interested in an introduction to anyone. She had come to this country to build something of her own, and she intended to keep doing that, with or without the Kang family's approval. And if Han Miran wanted to know why she'd cared for Hana the way she had, the answer was simply that Hana was a child who had stopped speaking and started again. And Amara did not require a more complicated reason than that. Han Miran studied her for a long moment after that, the kind of silence that in that room clearly functioned as its own form of speech and said only that she would think about it. Not a rejection, not an acceptance, the deliberate ambiguity of a woman who had spent 40 years learning never to concede a point before she was ready. She did not smile as Amara left, but she did not, Amara noticed, look at her the same way she had at the start of the hour, and she filed that small, uncertain shift away as the closest thing to progress she was likely to get that day. 3 weeks after the tea house, Han Miran tried once more directly this time, arriving unannounced at the restaurant on a Tuesday afternoon, with an envelope Amara recognized immediately by its weight before she'd even opened it. The same weight as the one Junho had first offered her outside the staff entrance months earlier, in what already felt like a different life. "This isn't an insult," Han Miran said, seating herself at an empty table with the ease of a woman accustomed to rooms rearranging themselves around her presence. "It's a kindness. Whatever this has become with my son, it will cost you more than it gives you, and I would rather pay that cost now, cleanly, than watch you discover it later." Amara did not take the envelope. She had by now developed something close to a reflex around envelopes offered by people in this family, and this one triggered it faster than any before. "I didn't return that wallet for money," she said, "and I'm not going to leave for it either." She said it evenly, without theater, the same steady register she used for difficult customers, though her pulse was considerably less steady than her voice. "Your son and your granddaughter are not a transaction I'm interested in completing, Mrs. Han. I'm sorry if that's inconvenient for you." For a moment, Han Miran said nothing at all, and something crossed her face that Amara couldn't fully read. Not quite anger, not quite respect, something adjacent to both. She stood, straightened her coat, and left the envelope on the table anyway, untouched, a small, deliberate provocation that Amara left exactly where it was until her shift ended, at which point she handed it to Mr. Choi to return by courier, unopened, with a note of her own. Thank you, but no. It was not, she understood even as she wrote it, the end of Han Miran's resistance. It was, at best, a single round in a longer contest. And she went home that night, bone-tired in a way that had nothing to do with her shift, wondering, not for the first time, whether the cost her own mother had warned her about was only beginning to come due. Yep. The photograph that started it was, in isolation, almost nothing. Amara crouched beside Hana outside her school, adjusting the girl's collar against the cold. Doyun, a few steps behind them, checking his phone, the three of them arranged, entirely by accident, in the unmistakable geometry of a family. It ran 2 days later on a business gossip site under the headline, Iseong's Chairman and His Mystery Woman, alongside a second photograph, older, of Doyun and Yuri Baek at a charity gala 18 months earlier. Yuri, heir to Baek Textiles, whose family's planned merger with Iseong had been quietly understood in the circles that mattered to come with an understanding about marriage attached to it. The article did not use the word gold digger directly. It did not need to. It managed the accusation through insinuation instead. A foreign waitress, a grieving widower, a fortune, questions any reasonable reader might ask themselves. Reporter Song Ji-eun, who had built her career on precisely this kind of careful insinuation, was not, Amara would later understand, motivated by malice toward her specifically. She was motivated by clicks and by a tip that had reached her desk from someone inside Beck Textiles, with a very clear interest in derailing whatever this was before it derailed a merger worth considerably more than any one woman's reputation. By the time Amara saw the article herself, forwarded by Blessing with 3 exclamation points and no further comment, it had already been read 40,000 times. Customers she had served for months looked at her differently that week. One woman, paying her bill, said, not quite under her breath, that some people would do anything for a Korean passport. And Amara finished the transaction without responding, because responding, she had learned long ago, only ever gave people exactly what they were fishing for. Doyen called her that evening, his voice carrying a tightness she hadn't heard since the hospital corridor. He offered immediately and without her asking to issue a statement, to have the article taken down, to send legal letters that would make reporter Song regret every word she'd published. Amara told him quietly that none of that would undo what 40,000 strangers already believed about her, and that the article had done exactly what it was designed to do, regardless of whether it stayed online another hour or another year. She did not tell him that night about the customer's comment, or about the 2 co-workers who had suddenly become very interested in her immigration paperwork, or about the message from her mother in Lagos, forwarded by a cousin who'd somehow seen the story too, asking in careful, worried English whether everything was truly all right. Some costs she was learning, you carried alone even when someone was standing right there offering to help you carry them, because explaining the full weight of it felt like handing him one more thing to feel guilty about. And he already, she suspected, carried more of that than was good for him. Hannah heard about it from a classmate, the way children always seem to hear the things adults try hardest to keep from them. A girl at school repeating something her mother had said at dinner about Hannah's father and the waitress and whether it was true she was only after his money. Hannah did not fully understand the accusation. She understood enough to come home quiet, the particular watchful quiet Amara recognized from their first weeks together. The quiet of a child recalibrating how safe a thing actually was. She would not explain at first what was wrong, and when she finally did, in the flat, careful English she used when something mattered too much to risk getting the grammar wrong, she asked Amara directly whether it was true, whether she only liked being here because of the money. Amara had prepared herself, over 4 years in this country, for a great many difficult questions. She had not prepared for that one, from that particular 7-year-old, and it took her a long moment to trust her own voice enough to answer. She told Hannah the truth, that she had needed the money once, badly, and was not ashamed of that, but that the money was not why she came on Tuesdays and Thursdays anymore, hadn't been for a long time, and that she understood if Hannah had questions, but that she would never, under any circumstances, lie to her about something this important. It seemed to land. It did not entirely undo the damage. Amara found herself, over the following days, doing the arithmetic again, differently this time. Not what returning the wallet had cost her, but what staying might cost Hannah, whether a child who had only just learned to laugh again deserved to have that laughter attached to a scandal she was too young to understand. She drafted a message to Junho, twice, explaining that she thought it best to end the arrangement, that the article had made her position untenable, that she was sorry. She did not send either draft. She sat with her phone in her lap in her small apartment above the laundromat, the same apartment where this had all started with a stranger's wallet in her hand, and understood, with a clarity that felt almost physical, that she had reached the exact point her mother had warned her about. The point where loving easily and leaving hard converge, and you have to choose, honestly, which one costs you less. Yao The Iseong Foundation's annual gala had been scheduled for months before any of this began, and canceling it, Han Miran informed her son flatly, would only confirm every rumor currently circulating about instability inside the family and the company both. Do-yoon attended as expected, in the dark suit that photographed well and said nothing well too, and found himself, an hour into the evening, cornered by Director Oh near the bar with the particular gentle menace of a man delivering board consensus disguised as friendly advice. The Beck merger was worth 11% of next year's projected revenue. Director Oh reminded him, unnecessarily, since Do-yoon had the figure memorized down to the decimal. Yuri Bayek was here tonight, gracious as ever despite everything, and it would not go unnoticed, by the board, by her family, by the market itself, if the chairman spent the evening failing to acknowledge just how much goodwill this particular scandal had already cost. It was not, Director O said carefully, a demand. It was simply an observation about optics, the kind boards were paid to make. Do-yoon listened to the entire speech without interrupting, and when it finished, he found Yuri Baek herself across the room, sooner than Director O likely intended, and had the conversation directly instead, a shorter one than either of them expected, in which Yuri, to her credit, admitted plainly that she'd never particularly wanted the marriage-shaped merger either, that it had always been her father's arithmetic more than hers, and that she'd allowed Song Ji-yoon's tip to run partly out of loyalty to that arithmetic, and partly, she admitted with something almost like relief at finally saying it, because refusing felt harder than complying. It did not fully absolve her. It did clarify for Do-yoon that the opposition in front of him was not a villain requiring defeat so much as a woman caught in the same inherited machinery he'd spent 6 years half resenting himself. Across the room, near the entrance, he saw Amara, invited at his insistence and against Han Miran's initial objection, as Hana's guardian for the evening, rather than anything more complicated, though everyone in the room understood the distinction was largely cosmetic. She had almost not come. She told him so, quietly, when he crossed the room to find her, that she'd stood outside the venue for 10 full minutes, deciding whether to walk in or go home. He asked her to stay, not for the optics Director O cared about, and not, he was careful to say, for anything she owed him, but because he had spent the last several weeks discovering that a room without her in it felt, increasingly, like the wrong room to be standing in. It was, by his own admission, not a particularly eloquent thing to say in the middle of a gala, with Director O and half the board watching from across the room and Han Miran watching from the other. It was, Amara thought, considerably more honest than anything eloquent would have been. The moment came without either of them fully choosing it. Han Miran approached them both near the end of the evening, in full view of the board, of Director O, of a dozen photographers who had been quietly hoping all night for exactly this, and asked her son, directly and without softening it for the audience, whether the rumors about his intentions toward Ms. Nwosu were true. It was, Amara understood immediately, a test disguised as a question. Han Miran forcing the confrontation into the open on her own terms, at a moment of her own choosing, rather than letting the tabloids continue setting the pace. Do-yoon did not hesitate as long as Amara feared he might. He said, plainly enough for the nearest photographers to hear clearly, that Ms. Nwosu had returned a wallet to a stranger at real cost to herself, had brought his daughter back to a life he'd feared she'd lost permanently, and had done both without once asking anything of him beyond fair pay and honest treatment, and that, if the board considered a woman of that character a liability to the company's reputation, the board's understanding of the company's reputation needed considerably more correcting than his relationship with her did. It was not a declaration of love. It did not need to be. Han Miran, for the first time since the tea house, said nothing critical at all, which everyone in the family understood to be, from her, its own form of surrender. Amara, for her part, understood that being defended, however genuinely, was not the same as being safe, and when Do-yoon turned to her afterward, visibly relieved, she made herself say the thing she'd been rehearsing for days. She would not be paraded through galas as proof of anyone's good character, hers or his. She intended to keep her apartment, her shifts, her own name on her own paperwork, and her plan. Still unfinished, still hers, to save enough to enroll in the hospitality program she'd been quietly researching for a year toward a small restaurant of her own someday. Jollof rice on a menu she wrote herself. Whatever this was becoming with him, she said, it would have to make room for that, not replace it. Doyen said that it would. She believed him mostly and understood that mostly was, for now, enough to keep going on. He came to the restaurant on a Thursday evening in early spring, alone, without Junho, without warning, and asked Mr. Choi with unexpected formality whether table 12 was available. It was the same booth. Amara noticed before she'd even reached the table the particular vertigo of watching a memory reassemble itself in real time. And when she arrived to take his order, she found, instead of a menu request, the wallet sitting on the table between them. The same dark brown leather, older now, softer at the corners, monogram nearly worn smooth from a year of being carried by a man who had apparently never replaced it. "I never told you what was inside it," he said, before she could ask why he'd come. "The note. You saw it. I know you did. There's a crease in it now that wasn't there before, and I never once minded, in case you were wondering. Though I understand why you never mentioned it." Amara sat down across from him without being asked, something she had never once done with a customer in 3 years at this restaurant, and said nothing because she understood this was not a conversation that needed her words yet. He opened the wallet and took out the note, unfolded it fully for the first time in front of another person since his wife had written it, and read the grocery list aloud first, almost laughing at how ordinary it was. Rice, soy sauce, a child's vitamins, before his voice found the line at the bottom, the one added later, in different ink. "Don't forget to laugh today," he read quietly. "She wrote it the morning of a scan we were both dreading, taped it to the mirror so I'd see it before I left, and I put it in this wallet the day after the funeral, and never once, in 2 years, managed to actually do what it said. Not until a Tuesday about 8 months ago, in my own kitchen, over jollof rice." He looked up at her. "I wanted you to know what you were carrying that first night. I wanted you to know it wasn't money that mattered in there. I think some part of me has been trying to say that ever since." Haina arrived a moment later, having walked in from the car with Junho trailing a respectful distance behind, and climbed onto the bench beside Amara without asking, the way she had stopped asking permission for that particular seat months ago. She had brought something of her own, a folded piece of paper, considerably less worn than the one still open on the table, in the careful, uneven handwriting of a 7-year-old still learning where the letters should sit on a line. She had written it herself, she announced, at school, during a lesson about family trees that had made her think about things she wanted to say and hadn't had anywhere to put them. She unfolded it and read it aloud herself, insisting. The same 6 words underneath a drawing of 3 stick figures standing outside a restaurant that Amara recognized, with some effort, as this one. "Don't forget to laugh today either." Doyen took both notes, his wife's, worn soft with 2 years of carrying, and his daughter's, new and slightly smudged with pencil, and placed them together in the wallet's inner pocket, side by side, the way you place 2 things you intend to keep for a very long time. He did not propose that night, not with a speech and not with a ring, understanding correctly that Amara would have found either premature and probably said so. He asked her instead, Whether table 12 might become a regular booking, Tuesdays and Thursdays, the same as always, except that now he'd like to be there for dinner too, not just to collect his daughter afterward. Amara said that could probably be arranged, on the condition that he learned to eat jollof of rice without asking, every single time, whether it was supposed to be this spicy. He said he could probably manage that too. Outside, the Seoul evening had gone soft and blue, neon starting to bloom along the wet street, the way it had on the night this all began, and she found herself thinking that the wallet she'd once weighed in her hand, calculating exactly what returning it might cost her, had turned out to be the cheapest expensive decision she had ever made. If you have ever weighed the true cost of doing the right thing, what it takes from you and what it quietly gives back, tell me in the comments, because I would love to know. And if this story stayed with you tonight, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. There are more nights like this one still waiting to be told.